How often do we believe that power alone makes someone wise? And how many times have we ignored advice simply because we believed we already knew the answer? The truth is, wisdom does not always come from authority. Sometimes it comes from the quiet voices around us, the people we overlook, the ones we rarely stop to hear. Today's story is about a king who ruled a powerful kingdom but had not yet learned the greatest skill a leader could ever have: the ability to listen. Watch this story until the end, because the lesson hidden within it might change the way you listen to the people around you. Long ago, beyond a wide river and surrounded by green hills, there stood a magnificent kingdom called Valoria. Its golden gates shone under the sun. Its markets were filled with merchants from distant lands, and its people were known for their hard work and loyalty. At the center of that kingdom stood a grand palace made of white stone and tall pillars. Inside that palace lived King Alric, the ruler of Valoria. King Alric was strong, intelligent, and confident, but he carried one flaw that no one in the kingdom dared to speak about openly. The king did not listen. Whenever his advisors offered ideas, he waved them away. Whenever a villager tried to speak about their struggles, the king would quickly end the conversation. In his mind, a king was meant to give orders, not hear opinions. Over time, the royal court became silent. The ministers spoke less. The advisors stopped suggesting ideas. Even the people of the kingdom learned to keep their thoughts to themselves. They believed their voices did not matter. Then one year, something troubling began to happen. The crops in the northern fields started to fail. Farmers noticed that the soil had grown dry and weak. The river that once watered their fields had slowly begun to change its course. Concerned villagers traveled to the capital and asked the royal court for help. One elderly farmer stepped forward and bowed before the king. "My king," he said humbly, "the river is shifting away from our fields. If we dig new irrigation channels, we can guide the water back to the farmland and save the harvest." But the king barely looked up from his throne. "Nonsense," he replied. "The river has always flowed the same way. The problem is poor farming. Work harder and the harvest will improve." The farmer lowered his head and quietly returned home. Weeks passed and the harvest grew worse. Food prices rose in the markets. The farmers struggled. The people grew worried. Still, no one dared challenge the king again. Then one evening, something unexpected happened. A violent storm swept across the kingdom. Thunder roared through the sky, rain poured down in powerful waves, and the river flooded the nearby lands. The flood destroyed several farms and carried away roads and bridges. For the first time, King Alric realized that something in his kingdom was truly wrong. The next morning, he decided to travel through the villages in disguise. Wearing his simple cloak, the king walked through the damaged fields and broken homes. He heard the people talking quietly amongst themselves. "We tried to warn the king," one farmer said, "but he never listens," another replied. Those words struck the king deeply. For the first time in his life, he saw the truth he had ignored. His people were not weak. They were not foolish. They simply had never been heard. Later that day, King Alric returned to the palace and called for the same elderly farmer who had once tried to warn him. When the farmer entered the royal hall, he bowed respectfully. But this time, the king did something no one expected. He stepped down from his throne. "Tell me again about the river," King Alric said calmly. The farmer looked surprised, but he explained everything. He spoke about the shifting water, the weakening soil, and how a simple system of irrigation channels could guide the river back to the farmland. This time, the king listened carefully. Not once did he interrupt. Not once did he dismiss the idea. When the farmer finished speaking, the king turned to his ministers. "We will build the irrigation channels, not because I command it, but because the wisdom of the people has shown us the way. Soon, workers from every village joined together. Farmers, builders, and engineers dug long canals through the fields. They guided the river's water back to the dry land. Weeks later, green shoots began to appear across the northern farms again. The harvest slowly returned. The kingdom of Valoria was saved. But something even more important had changed. King Alric himself had changed. From that day forward, the royal court became a place of open voices. Farmers shared their concerns, merchants offered ideas, teachers and craftsmen spoke about improving the kingdom, and the king listened to them all, because he had learned the most powerful truth of leadership. A crown might give someone authority, but listening gives someone wisdom. Years later, people told stories about the reign of King Alric, not as the king who ruled with the strongest army or the richest palace, but as the king who discovered the power of listening. And through that simple change, he became the wisest ruler Valoria had ever known. Because sometimes the greatest leaders are not the ones who speak the most, they are the ones who learn to listen the best. So remember this lesson in your own life. Listen to the quiet voices around you. Listen to the advice that challenges your thinking. Listen even when it is easier to ignore. Because wisdom often arrives not as a command, but as a voice waiting patiently to be heard.